In 2014, a young woman in her 30s walked through the halls of Silicon Valley as one of the most celebrated entrepreneurs on the planet. Elizabeth Holmes had something that venture capitalists dreamed about: a company worth $9 billion. Media outlets called her the next Steve Jobs. She had the black turtleneck to match. Investment firms backed her with hundreds of millions of dollars. Billionaires like Rupert Murdoch, the Walton family, and Betsy DeVos poured fortunes into her startup. What happened next was not a success story. It became one of the most stunning collapses in business history, leaving investors devastated and real patients with dangerous, inaccurate medical results. This is the story of Theranos, the startup that promised to revolutionize healthcare, but instead delivered deception at a billion-dollar scale. The promise that captured hearts and wallets, the idea, seemed almost too good to be true, because it was. Elizabeth Holmes started Theranos in 2003 while still a teenager at Stanford University. She dropped out at 19 years old with a vision that would shake the entire medical industry. Theranos claimed to have invented a device called the Edison that could perform over 240 blood tests using just a single drop of blood collected from a finger prick. No more painful needle sticks, no more multiple vials, no more waiting days for results. The technology promised faster diagnosis, cheaper tests, and easier access to healthcare for everyone. For a young entrepreneur with minimal experience in biotechnology, the vision was audacious. For investors searching for the next transformative company, it was irresistible. Holmes cultivated a carefully constructed image. She studied Steve Jobs obsessively and mimicked his style, adopting the black turtleneck as her signature look. She spoke in an unusually deep voice that commanded attention in boardrooms. She gave compelling presentations about changing the world. Major publications put her on their covers. Forbes named her the youngest self-made female billionaire in America. Time magazine featured her among the most influential people. She became the darling of business media, and the machine of hype accelerated her rise exponentially. But behind the carefully crafted persona was a fundamental problem. The technology simply did not work. The cracks began to show inside Theranos. Things looked very different from the polished outside. The company operated like a fortress of secrecy. Employees were divided into departments that rarely communicated with each other. People who raised concerns about the Edison device were marginalized or fired. The corporate culture became defined by fear and silence. When Ramesh Sunny Balwani joined the company as president in 2009, he enforced this culture with a fiery temperament. He became known as an enforcer inside the walls of Theranos. What most people did not know was that Holmes and Balwani were in a secret romantic relationship. They ran the company together while hiding this crucial fact from employees and the board of directors. The Edison device, the heart of Theranos' entire operation, had a critical flaw. It could not accurately perform the majority of the tests the company claimed it could. The company's own devices could only reliably run about 12 out of 200 advertised tests. For the rest, Theranos secretly used commercially available machines manufactured by other companies. Employees knew this. Testing showed failure after failure. Yet the company continued making promises to investors and patients that it knew were false. When the company needed results for demonstrations, it sometimes manipulated data. When partners asked for proof of the technology's accuracy, the company either refused or provided misleading information. The board of directors, composed of powerful figures like Henry Kissinger and George Shultz, lacked scientific expertise. They were unable to ask the right technical questions or challenge Holmes' claims effectively. A board's responsibility is to protect investors and hold leadership accountable. This board largely failed at both. They were captivated by Holmes's vision and her charisma, just as the media had been. The unraveling the facade began to crack in 2015. John Carreyrou, an investigative journalist at the Wall Street Journal, started investigating Theranos after receiving a tip that something was wrong with the company's claims. He interviewed former employees who had grown disgusted with what they were witnessing. Tyler Schultz, a young Theranos employee whose grandfather George Schultz served on the company's board, became a whistleblower despite enormous pressure. Erica Chung, another employee, also risked her career to speak the truth. These brave individuals told Carey-Rue about the failing technology, the culture of intimidation, and most damning, the false test results being sent to real patients who were making life-changing medical decisions based on inaccurate information. In October 2015, Carey-Rue published his bombshell investigation. The article detailed how the Edison device gave inaccurate results and revealed that Theranos had been using other companies' machines for most of its testing. The story shattered the mythology surrounding the company. Holmes responded by calling the Wall Street Journal a tabloid and promising that Theranos would soon publish data proving the accuracy of its technology. She appeared on television news programs defending herself. The data never materialized. Instead, investigation accelerated. The Arizona Attorney General sued Theranos, alleging that the company had sold 1.5 million inaccurate blood tests to state residents. The company settled by refunding customers and paying $4.65 million in penalties. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which oversees medical laboratories, began investigations. Major pharmacy chains that had partnered with Theranos, like Walgreens, sued to recover the massive investments they had made. Walgreens alone tried to recover $140 million. Investors who had backed the company with billions filed lawsuits. The SEC charged Theranos with fraud. Holmes and Balwani both faced criminal indictments on charges of wire fraud and conspiracy. The company officially shut down in 2018, just 3 years after the Wall Street Journal investigation. Hundreds of employees lost their jobs. The reckoning in 2022, Elizabeth Holmes was convicted on 4 counts of defrauding investors. In November of that year, she was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. Ramesh Balwani faced his own trial and was convicted on multiple fraud counts. He was sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison. Both executives appealed their convictions, but the courts upheld the guilty verdicts. Forbes, which had celebrated Holmes as a billionaire, revised her net worth to zero. She began serving her prison sentence in 2023 at a federal facility in Texas. The investors who had handed her money lost virtually everything. Families received inaccurate test results that could have harmed their health. The reputation of Silicon Valley took another blow. The real cost of the financial damage was staggering. Theranos raised over $700 million from investors. All of that money essentially vanished. But the true cost extended far beyond dollars. Real people received false medical results. A patient might have been told they had a disease they did not have, causing unnecessary stress and medical treatment. Another patient might have been told they were healthy when they actually needed intervention. The broken trust in healthcare companies intensified public skepticism about medical innovation. The incident taught harsh lessons about founder worship, the dangers of charisma without competence, and the importance of rigorous oversight. Why this matters today: the Theranos scandal reveals patterns that repeat across Silicon Valley. Young, charismatic founders with compelling visions attract enormous amounts of capital. Media attention creates celebrity status. This fame becomes a substitute for actual results. Boards composed of famous but inexperienced members fail to ask hard questions. Secrecy replaces transparency. When anyone raises concerns, they are pushed out. The company doubles down on its claims instead of investigating failures. By the time the truth emerges, billions have been spent and damage has been done. The startup world learned some lessons from Theranos. Investors became more skeptical of claims without supporting evidence. Due diligence improved in later funding rounds. Regulatory scrutiny over healthcare startups intensified. But as recent failures in 2024 and 2025 prove, the pattern continues. Companies that raise at absurdly high valuations without clear paths to profitability still collapse. Founders who prioritize celebrity status over building real products still appear. The mechanisms that failed to catch Theranos are still present in today's venture capital ecosystem. Elizabeth Holmes gambled that she could will the Edison device into existence through confidence and marketing. She believed her own mythology. The company's employees, investors, and patients paid the price for her overconfidence. The story of Theranos is ultimately a cautionary tale about what happens when ambition exceeds honesty, when hype replaces substance, and when an entire ecosystem chooses to believe in a dream rather than demand proof. The billion-dollar disaster that was Theranos remains one of startup culture's most painful lessons about the cost of unchecked deception.